biçim? אוקיי, אז תן לי את זה. חלץ זה בדרך All right, here we are. We are live. Those of you in the chat out there, can you guys hear? 1, 2, 3, sound is okay?
Yes, I can hear it on.
You can hear it? All right. All right. Okay. All right. We got a few people watching. That's good. All right. Yeah, I didn't set this up for the music, so you don't get the dramatic opening of the Yaron Brook show. Thanks everybody for joining. Sorry we're a little late, but I got stuck in London traffic. Coming back from a school that I was speaking at. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. We will be the show today will be probably on the shorter side because I have to run to GB News to do the Mark Dolan, is that right? Mark Dolan show. And you can catch that on YouTube, I think. Can anybody here know? So we've got a live audience here, so I'll be referring to them once in a while. You guys can ask questions or yell or wave if you want to ask anything. So I'll be the camera's over there. I'll be looking at them. So you can find it on YouTube if you want to watch it. I'll be on for 3 hours, so I don't know if that's worth it. But it'll be, so I think if you do Mark Dolan, GB News on YouTube, you'll probably be able to catch the stream. I think they stream the entire thing. And then they put up little segments on YouTube. Last time, somebody, Razi, are we going to be able to get somebody to record the whole thing so I can get the video of the whole thing? So I'll get video of the whole thing, and I'll have somebody break it up, and we'll put up our own segments of the entire Mark Dolan show. So we're doing Yaron Brook show here live. I think I've got 3 topics that I thought I would cover today, and then I'll take questions. Of course, let me remind everybody. I don't see Ali here, but let me remind everybody. It is kind of the middle of the day in the U.S., so let me remind everybody that you can ask Super Chat questions. We have Super Chat goals. I think it's $600 a show. Ali is not going to be here to bug you. I am not allowed to bug you. I can only bug you at the beginning of the show and the end of the show. Those are the new rules. So you're on your own. You're going to have to be responsible and ask questions and use the Super Chat appropriately. We have a live audience here in London. I am in London for a few days before I go to Athens, Vienna, and Lisbon for more talks. But I want to start today by talking about the talk I just gave, which was the funnest talk I've given in a long time. But that's COVID, so that doesn't count for that much. But it was the funnest talk I've given in a long time. Then we've got a couple of other topics. And I apologize to some of you, but I will mention Trump's name a few times later, not now. But so if you can't handle that, then you can't handle hearing me talk about Trump, then you might want to leave. I just came from a school in West London. I'd say there were probably anywhere between 100 and 120 kids. Probably the 2 oldest classes. So what is it? 12th and 13th form or something like that in the UK, 11th to 12th grade in the US. I'd say 80% of the kids are minority kids, so all shades, whatever you want to call it, right? So it was a very diverse group, socio-economically probably from the working class. Parents, a lot of parents are immigrants. You could tell by who the kids were. But it's a school that was founded, it's like a charter school in America. I don't know what you call it here. Free school? I don't know what you call it here. You've got so many different types of schools that are weird. It's government funded, but it's run by our independent board, I think. And Toby, what's his family name? Toby Young, who is the free speech guy, who doesn't really understand what free speech is, put it to that, is kind of one of the founding members of it. He's on the board of directors, maybe the chairman. And this is the second time I've gone to the school and spoken there. So It was fun the first time, and it was fun this time, and we got a lot more students. So this was optional; they didn't have to come. It was primarily economics, politics, and religious studies groups. I guess the majors at the school. The topic was inequality, which was a good topic for this audience. Because it allows you to do a lot of different things. I talked about the Industrial Revolution, about the Enlightenment, about reason, about you could cover a lot of stuff about economic freedom. You can cover a lot of stuff under the guise of inequality. I talked for about a half an hour. We had about half an hour of questions. And it was fun because most of the kids hated my guts. I mean, they'd never heard anything like it, and they knew that they disagreed from moment number one, and they completely kind of were, some of them were really freaking out a little bit. You could tell they were getting a little emotional. And it was great because it created this cognitive dissonance in their mind. It got them really thinking. The teachers didn't know what to do exactly. But generally, the teachers were positive because their approach was, and this is why it's a healthy school, it's a good school. Teachers' approach was, yeah, whether we agree or not, this is getting the kids to think. This is exactly what education should be about. This is pushing their envelope. This is challenging them. And I was saying things that maybe some of the teachers believed but couldn't say in school because they're teachers. I said to, one of the students said something, and I said, no, you're just wrong. And a teacher's not going to say that when it comes to economics or history. It's just, my teacher said that to me many times. But I don't think today teachers can say stuff like that in a classroom. So they felt like I was saying stuff that maybe they would like to say, or maybe they just viewed it as, this is great to push the envelope, to challenge, and so on. So Tessie is on the Super Chat. How come she's not here, live? Oh, there you are, and on the Super Chat. Wait, that can't be right.
Not Super Chat.
No, on the chat. She hasn't given any dollars yet, so yeah, that's true. You can do both at the same time. That's very cool. All right. Wow, I have to adjust my my perception. So these kids, obviously, so first, this is a good school. It's a school that's, obviously in a difficult neighborhood, maybe, or with some, but I don't know, 80-90% of the kids go to university. Many of them, I think, over a third of them go to the top tier universities. And the rest, many of them go to kind of the second tier universities. So they're all, these are smart kids. I don't know what the criteria is to getting into the school, but the kids are smart, they're bright. But the most dominant voices among them, the ones that speak up, the ones that ask questions, the ones that engage, are Marxists. It's just explicitly so. It's not hidden. Like, in the whole talk, you didn't mention class structure, right? What about the role of class structure in all of this? And I said, there is no such thing. And I was like, whoa, you can't say that. So it's really interesting to see that even in a better school, where the chairman of the board is not a Marxist, right? He's a conservative, I think he'd call himself, or a pretty free market conservative at that, for the most part. The kids, whether they get it from their teachers or whether they get it from the culture, and I think it's primarily from the culture, and I think it's from their readings, that's what they're exposed to. What they're exposed to are these ideas about that are explicitly out of Marx, and they have all the stuff out of the 19th century that you would expect that is wrong, right? But that is taught. Whether it's the child labor or the fact that in Britain, don't you know that in Britain all the wealth in the 19th century was created by aristocrats who were hoarding the wealth, and they were holding down the old peasants, and now their peasants were their workers, and nothing changed. There was no nouveau riche. There was no entrepreneurial class. You tell that to all the wealth that was created in the 19th century by people who are nouveau riche and got discriminated by society because they weren't blue bloods or whatever you call it here in the UK. I guess half the audience here is like immigrants. They're not even Brits. So they don't know what I'm talking about. I've got a live audience, but it turns out, half the objectivists in London are not British. think that's probably right. Maybe more than half. Yeah. We got one. Any other Brits here? One? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 5 out of 20. No, it's good. I wish there were more Brits, but it is true. We got a lot of Europe represented in the audience. We've got Israel overrepresented in the audience as always. Yeah. Anyway, so a lot of good questions, a lot of challenging, a lot of challenges. Everybody kind of challenged me. Of course, slavery came up, and quite a few immigrants from Africa in the audience, children of immigrants. Hard to tell, but so all the mythology that surrounds kind of the rise of capitalism, the Industrial Revolution, it makes everything we do so hard, and this is why it's hard to be optimistic about our ability to succeed in the culture in the short run. It's because they don't know anything in the sense of what they know is all wrong, or wrong in important ways, in ways that are very difficult to undo. And the facts are wrong, and the interpretation of the fact is wrong. And as a consequence of that, any interpretation, you're not even agreeing on the facts. So this kid, the Marxist, asked me a question, and he starts out with this whole class thing, and he says, given that, and I said, wait a minute, I don't accept that given that. And he said, but I haven't asked a question. And I said, yeah, but you've made a statement, a fact, supposedly, that's just all wrong. And I got a big laugh, because you're not supposed to tell people they're all wrong. That's not politically correct. Kathleen, thank you. Are you here? Yeah, there you go. All right. My live audience is super chatting. Where are all you guys who are? I'm also a little worried that you're hogging the bandwidth, but the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute, is there enough Wi-Fi here for everybody to be on YouTube? But if we have trouble, you'll let me know, and I'll tell them to shut down. So it is a challenge, because we don't have Ethernet here. Anyway, so it makes the challenge so much greater, the fact that they don't understand the Enlightenment, they don't understand the Industrial Revolution, all the facts that you need in order to induce, or in order to reduce to reality, the ideas of objectivism, they don't have, because, I'm not sure we didn't have, right? But I don't know, something made it us open to alternative, to interpretation, and made it open for us to go do the research and to figure out what really happened and figure out what the facts really are. But the effort required to do that is tremendous. And that's a huge barrier in our attempts to kind of impact the world, is that people don't know history. And they don't know what's happening today. So I brought up Jeff Bezos. Oh my God. You'd think I'd mention Satan himself. I mean, what's wrong with Jeff Bezos? He exploits everybody. He exploits his workers. By the way, Amazon just raised their minimum wage at Amazon. It's $18 an hour, which is a topic I'll talk about today, which is labor shortages, massive labor shortages all over the world. I was at one of my favorite restaurants in London yesterday and asking the chef how he's doing and how things are going, and he says, everything's great, we got customers, we're booked solid, can't find workers. And it's everywhere I go in the world. I haven't been that many places, but I get the same message. Tessie?
Oh, no, I'm staying up.
What's that? Oh, that's Tessie. Yes, sorry. Kathleen, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ask a question, yeah.
To do with labor shortages.
Yeah, can you wait on the labor shortages? Because I'm going to get to labor shortages in a minute. It really is, we need what objectivism really needs is, we need philosophers, but we really need a bunch of historians. We need people to be writing books on history, and there's not a lot. If somebody came up and asked, Yaron, what should I read about the history of the 19th century, right? What really happened in the 19th century? I don't know what I'd say. I don't really have here's the source, here's what you should do. So it's definitely, we need historians, we need books on history, we need the facts. We need to educate people about the facts. Now, the fun of these talks is, obviously part of it is the cognitive dissonance you create in some of the students, and the fact that you can see some of them being physically upset, right? They really get upset. They really don't like what you're saying. But of course, there's always a handful who look like you've just opened up a world to them, right? There are always people, when you talk about personal responsibility, where you talk about the fact that it's their life is theirs, and it's their choices that matter, and they can do anything in their life, and not to think of themselves in this box of class, because I talked about the class puts you in a box, and you fit in that class, and don't think of it that way. You're an individual. They light up, and they're like nodding, and they're like, yeah, this. And when I talk about the Enlightenment, about the Enlightenment, the essence of the Enlightenment is to liberate the individual. It's to liberate the individual in two senses. Liberate his mind. You have the capacity to know the truth, right? You have the capacity to reason. Everybody has the capacity to reason, not just, the scholars in the scholastic school that reason about how many angels can sit at the head of a pin. But you can know reality, and you can understand Newton's laws. And if you can understand Newton's laws, you can understand pretty much anything that's going on in the world out there. It's not that hard. And so it liberates the individual by liberating and giving him the confidence in his own mind, right? And this is the age of reason. We have reason, therefore we can live. And the second sense is a moral sense. That is, that's an epistemological sense, right? The Enlightenment epistemologically frees the individual because it says you are capable of thinking, of living, of choosing, of shaping your own life. And then the second part of it is you have the moral right to do so. You are an end in yourself. You are, morally, the purpose of your life is, some variation of achieving happiness in some form, or achieving life, or being good at it. Not completely, not anchored in a morality of egoism, because they didn't have that, but some kind of vague notion of the individual matters, right? Morally. He's not just a cog. He's not just, cannon fodder. You ever seen those movies where they show like Napoleonic Wars or other, wars from way back, and the soldiers just march into as the cannons are falling all around them, they're just marching like a column. They all, half of them, they know they're going to die, and nobody cares, right? We just, it's cannon fodder. They don't matter, right? The officers all in the back on their horses, waiting for this thing to go by, and then they'll charge or they'll do something. But it's human life insignificant for the Roland. Thank you. But why aren't you here? Those are pounds that you're doing a super chat on, and he's not here. What's that? Oh, those are euros. Oh, okay. So now I understand why you're not there. All right. Why you're not here? You are there. Okay. Told you I was confused. So. Those are the two achievements in the Enlightenment. And when I talk about that, you can see a certain number of people, a certain percentage of these students, these young kids, are lighting up. Yeah, my life matters. Yeah, I can make choices myself. Yeah, I can create. And that's what makes it exciting and fun. And even if you just get a handful of them, it's one mind at a time. And some of the kids will remember the talk for a long time. Some of them, it'll just make them skeptical of the Marxism, and maybe they'll just be a little bit better than they would have otherwise been. Some of them won't make any difference, but for most of them, I think it'll make some difference. And some of them might be go and Google me and find Ayn Rand and do all that. So, which is the ultimate goal and would be truly ideal. So that was fun. As I mentioned, Jeff Bezos to them was like the devil. So I actually explained what does Jeff Bezos do and how he produces this whole chain of win-wins, right? All the way from people who manufacture stuff somewhere in the world. And I sit in Puerto Rico, and I get to trade with them without ever meeting them, without having their website, without knowing them at all, because Amazon is an intermediary that facilitates all of that. And whether it's Amazon buying from them and then selling to me, or whether it's Amazon allowing them to post on their website, creating a marketplace for me to buy from, it doesn't matter. The point is that I'm trading with millions of people that I couldn't have traded with without something like Amazon. Not to mention all the jobs created and so on, and the fact that people have alternatives. So that I think is, I think they learned something from that. Even the people who, weren't buying all the stuff, they've never heard anybody defend Jeff Bezos. Like, nobody does. It's just taken for granted that he's a bad guy. So I think that was a real positive. One of the real alarming things, but you see it over and over again for years now, from the left, from the kind of Marxist left, is their attitude towards work. So I've been getting these questions, right, from students, from young kids. And the question basically boils down to, why should I work? I don't want to work. I want to pursue my hobbies. I want to have fun. I don't want to work. And it's like, what? It's so weird. Now, where does that come from? It comes from Marx's vision of a utopia. So in the Marxist utopia, you don't have to work. In the Marxist utopia, all the material needs that we have, and needs here for Marx would include the iPhone, would include everything you need to live successfully, quote, right, is just provided partially because capitalism has been so successful, right? Marx would say, right? But capitalism has been successful in producing stuff, then the proletarians take it all over. They automate it. It's all robots now. So this is the utopia. It's all robots. So all the stuff we need is being produced. Doesn't require human thinking and human effort, unless you want to go into that field, and then it's fine. And then everybody gets to do what they want. So in a Marxist utopia, it's not like, nobody does anything. What you do is you pursue your hobbies. Like, everybody has a hobby, and everybody pursues their passion, and everybody's happy and floating around, and it's just wonderful. And the stuff you need just appears. It's like manna from heaven. It just drops, and it arrives. And if you want to be if you want to go and build stuff with your hands, you can do that. If you want to start a business, you can do that. You just can't have employees, to each according to his ability, from each according to his means. But you can do the activity, right, theoretically. The one thing Marx never explains is how we get from where we are today to that utopia. Like the dictatorship of the proletarian, that part he skips over, right? He describes it, says this is what has to happen, and then he goes to the utopia part. And so they take the utopia part as, well, of course. We don't want to work. We don't want to have a job. We don't want to have to produce stuff. The world is rich enough for stuff just to be provided to us. And it's like no sense that production requires effort, production requires a mind, production requires thought, production requires, people to actually go to work in the broader sense. And that they want to just skip to this utopia without having to do anything. And I don't remember 10 years ago people having that attitude. This seems like the left has adopted this new tactic of promising young people the utopia tomorrow. Like Marx, you had to go through a revolution. There was a whole process, right? And ultimately, over a long time, which he never explained, you get to this. But they want it now, right now, tomorrow. I remember a few years ago at the University of Texas, this kid came to the microphone and said, why should I work? There's enough wealth in the world just to provide me for the living. It was like, why should I provide you with a living? Because I don't want to work. It's my right. And it's one of the most bizarre of all the kind of questions, attitudes that I find out there, because it just goes against what we know about reality. Everything we know. It's kind of a metaphysical issue, right? For human beings to survive, we have to shape our environment. To shape our environment, we have to work. That work requires effort, requires thinking, requires changing the stuff out there. And some people don't get that. I think most people do. I don't think it's hugely popular, but there's the ones that are vocal, the ones that are passionate about their Marxism, that's where they are. They're at that level of, whim worshipping. I don't want to work. I actually do want to work. And that's what part of my answer was. No, you should find something you love doing and go do it. Work is not a burden. Work should be fun, exciting, thrilling. You should get up in the morning excited about going to work. It's sad that you're not. Arthur, thank you. Canada. No Americans today on the Super Chat. All right, I need a copy over the questions. All right, let's do, oops, I copied over the wrong question. Let's do Arthur's question since it's 50 Canadian dollars. Ever see the movie The Effect of, this is going to be an easy one. Ever see the movie The Effect of the Gamma Ray on Man in the Moon Marigolds? No, there's no such movie. Come on, Arthur, you're giving me a hard time here. No, I haven't. Should I see the movie The Effects of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds? With Joanna Woodward and Nellie Potts. All right, I'm putting it on my to-do list. I haven't seen the movie, so I will say something in the chat to convince me that a movie with that title is a movie I should go watch, because that seems bizarre. Okay, Baradola. Here? Or is that a euro? Is that a euro sign again? I'm getting my pounds and euros mixed up. Do you think schools as man-made institutions are responsible for early tribalistic premises? What are your thoughts on how, if masculine status and attracting girls in school might lead to tribalism in society? That second question, I don't know that I can answer. Let me try the first one. Do you think schools as man-made institutions are responsible for early tribalism premise? I certainly think today they are. I don't think they always have been, and I don't think they have to be, certainly. But I think certainly today, I think they're responsible for much of the evil in the world. They are responsible for teaching kids that their emotions are more important than their mind, encouraging kids to emote and feel and to express their feelings, but not encouraging them to think and challenge their thinking and challenge their minds. Today, there's more and more, as a consequence of critical race theory and kind of the other social problems of the left, social theories of the left. You've got much more tribalism in the sense of kids identifying with a particular race or particular ethnic group or particular class, as we saw with the Marxists. And I think all of those lead to more tribalism in society. So I definitely think that schools today are leading to tribalism, and I encourage people not to send their kids to traditional schools. I think there are many alternatives now, in the United States at least. I don't know about UK. There are many alternatives. There are education pods, there's homeschooling, there are private schools that are better, not the traditional private schools that are just as bad as the public schools, but there are Higher Ground and others who have a real alternative in terms of schooling for kids where the emphasis is on individualism, individual achievement, individual knowledge, the individual mind, and where the contrary, Montessori, for example. Montessori teaches kids to be independent thinkers and independent doers, because the whole Montessori project is around thinking and doing and learning from one's mistake and failing. Lots of failing goes on in Montessori. You try to put the round thing in the triangular thing, and it doesn't go. And then you figure out, it goes in the round thing, and you try it with other stuff, and you slowly figure out, no, it's round, and there's a round hole, and there's some relationship with the shape, and that's how you learn. You learn through doing and failing and trying and experimenting, and that kind of discovery process is very, very, very powerful. And Montessori does that, and it teaches you to think for yourself about the problems you're facing, and you come up with the solutions. It's not that the teacher comes, no, you idiot. You know, triangle doesn't fit in a round thing. You know, here, let me move your hand to where it's supposed to be. That would destroy the whole concept of Montessori. The whole point is for them to figure it out for themselves and thus gain the independence of mind and thought and action and the integration of all of that in their education. So that's what will be required. Okay, the second part of your question. I don't know. What are your thoughts on how if masculine status, I don't know what masculine status even means exactly, and attracting girls in schools might lead to tribalism in society? I don't know. All I remember from high school and trying to attract girls is that it led to isolation and loneliness, not to tribalism. It was depressing. I could never understand girls. So yeah, I mean, in high school anyway. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I quite caught up yet, but certainly in high school, I had no understanding. No, I don't get the question. I don't see how it's related to tribalism, and I don't think boys, girls, men, women is tribalism, right? Because men and women are different in very fundamental ways, and you can see that when you're growing up. You certainly can see that in high school, but they're still individuals, right? They're different and yet individuals, and it's not that all the guys are the same and all the girls are the same. There's just something different about the two groups, and they don't all think the same. All the women think the same, and all the men think the same. So there's no tribalism there. It's about, you know, the whole process is about trying to find an individual kind of match, both, you know, physically and intellectually and spiritually. And that's just bewildering and hard to do, right? And I don't think it stops being completely. I don't think it necessarily stops being hard at any point in time. Jonathan, thank you for the support. Jonathan representing the Americans, the few Americans listening in. That's Jonathan Honey, so he's pitching in. So it's ultimately individual boys seeking out individual girls, or, as the case may be, individual girls seeking out individual boys. That seems to work better. Like, the women makes up their mind, they pick the guy, and it's over, right? We don't have much, right? It's much simpler that way. We're so confused when it comes to these issues. Men are, particularly teenage boys are. We have no idea what we want. We have no idea what we like. Women seem to have it much more together at that age than guys do. At least it appears that way from a guy's perspective. And it worked for me. So. Yeah, it was, my wife knew way before I knew. So basically it was all over when she decided, it was all over. And it's worked out. So. Okay, so that was the school. That was the super chat, the high dollar pound euro super chats. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, let me do Michael's one, because I think that was over $20, and then we'll go to the next topic. Yeah, it's amazing Objectivism didn't sweep across the globe over the last 40 years. I guess humanity is a lot more spiritually and psychologically crippled than Rand or I could have imagined. Yes, I I think even Rand didn't realize how screwed up the world is. And primarily by religion, but not only by religion, by altruism and by really bad philosophy. And I think Rand thought, at least for a brief period of time, that once they were exposed to the ideas, once people actually read Atlas Shrugged, it was all over. That the ideas would just ripple through society and the world would indeed change. And I think she was crucially disappointed in the world when that didn't happen. And certainly Leonard Peikoff, I mean, he tells the story of, that there was something in him, once he read Atlas Shrugged, right? He read it as it was being written. There was a little bit in him that was disappointed because he was looking forward to changing the world, to being in the fight and change the world. And it was like, yeah, once people read this, it's all over. Nobody needs me, right? Because I'll just read Atlas Shrugged and it's done. And of course, it turned out that we do need him, and we didn't need him, and the world needs him. And Atlas Shrugged was not enough in a sense, and a lot more needs to be done. But yes, it's, I don't know, I've mentioned this on a few shows now, but it really, I really encourage people to read The Cave and the Light, because it's about this battle between Plato and Aristotle over the millennia, over the last couple of millennia, and it really gives you a sense of the struggle, the ideological struggle, and really now it's Rand versus Plato, right? That's who we're fighting against. We're fighting against Plato. And Plato's been around for, what, 2,500 years? Because all the bad guys are Platonic in some sense. They're all Platonists of one form or another. And he was smart. You know, he captured something, some human need, because people want to believe in it. In this world of forms, in this idealism, in this religion, I mean, Christianity is so Platonist. It's so Neoplatonist. It takes from Plato so much. And until you defeat Plato, you can't win. And Aristotle, you know, defeats him here and there. But mostly, Plato's winning, at least in the intellectual sphere. We might live Aristotelian lives. Plato's winning among the intellectuals and has almost forever, with the exception of the Enlightenment. All right, somebody's trying to call me. In London. Hopefully it's not GB News. We canceled you. Which is, of course, possible. It's happened to me where I'm in New York, I'm off to do Fox or something, and I get out of they sent a limo to get me. I get out of the limo and the phone's ringing, and it's a producer of the show, said, I don't know, George Bush has just made a speech and we're dropping you, and that's breaking news, and that's what we're doing. Or once I was on Neil Cavuto, literally a split screen, they had me talking, George Bush on the other screen, getting off the helicopter, going up to the mic, and Neil Cavuto says to me, sorry, we're gonna do his speech, and off I go, and there's George Bush doing his speech. So I don't blame them. I mean, George Bush was more popular than I was, from the rating perspective, certainly. Let's see. Okay, so what was the? Oh, what did I get from Pet? I don't know. It's some kind of sandwich. This is dinner before because I just realized that I had lunch. I had a great lunch. If anybody wants a recommendation for a great restaurant in centre of London. I had a great lunch, but I'm not going to have time for dinner because I have to rush from here to the TV station. So this is my on the way to the TV station dinner for 3 hours. All right, second topic I was going to talk about was why the hell am I talking about Donald Trump when Biden is actively trying to destroy the United States as we speak? Right now, it's happening. Why the hell am I talking about Donald Trump? I should be talking only about Biden. God, how many times do I have to say it? Biden is going to try to destroy America whether I say something about it or not. But the little influence I have, I might have, maybe at the margin, I hope, is to try to make the Republican Party better before the next election. I don't know if that'll happen. The only hope we have long term is for the Republican Party to be better than Trump. And right now, Trump dominates the Republican Party. So it's not a good party. Maybe it's better than Biden. Okay, I'll grant you that. It's still not good. What's the point of talking about Biden? All of you agree with me on Biden. The whole frigging world agrees with me on Biden. I mean, does anybody like Biden? Nobody likes Biden, right? I mean, what's the point of me attacking the left? Everybody who listens to the Yaron Brook show already thinks the left are horrible. And I spend a lot of time attacking the left, right? But you all agree with that. It's great for nods, and everybody say, yeah, go Yaron. Beat them up. This is great. I mean, it gets you excited. Good. I'm happy. And I'm happy to entertain all of you guys. But if you think about where you're going to have an impact, if we're going to have an impact, where we're going to be able to change things, it has to be in critiquing the right. It has to be in trying to make the right better. It has to be in trying to make the Republican Party a better opposition party to Biden. It has to be in convincing you to go out and be active in your communities to make the Republican Party better. You're not involved in Democratic politics. You're not going to make the Democratic Party better. Good luck. But you might. Our only chance, maybe, is either to have a third party, but good luck with that, or to make the Republican Party better. And the only way to make the Republican Party better, the only way, is to bury Donald Trump. It's to bury him, not just oppose him, but bury him. Because he will not allow the Republican Party to become better. So, that's the only place to have influence. I know it's more fun to attack the left. I get it. But it's not what it's about. Right? It's not about having fun. Well, a little bit. It's about, do we want to have an impact on the world? And if we want to have an impact on the world, we need to make whatever forces might be good better. We need to engage with them. And just spending all your time attacking the left when everybody else out there on the right is attacking the left already is just uninteresting. What's interesting is when you, from the quote, maybe right, are attacking the right. That makes it interesting. And that has influence. Right? When the left attacks the right, nobody listens because the left attacking the right. When the right attacks the left, nobody listens because the right attacking the left. But if you attack your own people, people listen because it's more objective. Anyway, I don't consider myself on the right, but people do. So it's, I mean, everybody, I mean, the main comment I got yesterday on Super Chat was, oh, you're on STDS. I mean, over and over and over and over, good, you're on STDS. I didn't hear one, I didn't see one comment that contradicted a statement I made about Donald Trump. One comment that contradicted a fact that I provided. Right? You don't agree with me on Trump? Fine, give me some facts. Give me some evidence. It's something I said yesterday. Or our assessment, we agree on the fact, but our assessment of the fact is different. I'm open to that. But to say, the first comment on this chat board, he's just using MSNBC talking points. I mean, even if that's true, are the talking points right? Or are they wrong? Isn't that the question? Not whether it came from the left or came from the right. What is the fact? What is truth? And it's astounding to me how few people actually care about the truth rather than care about defending their tribe. So, you know, yesterday the topic was pro-anti-Donald Trump. Nobody came to defend him, so I used my time on stage to, you know, I think I was pretty gentle in comparison to what I really think. Over what I think the damage Donald Trump does for America and does to the world. And that doesn't mean I think Biden's better. It just means I think that we need somebody better than Trump to oppose Biden. And my hope is that just at the margin, maybe I can convince Americans not to make Trump the nominee for president next time around. I don't know that I have that much influence, probably not. But that would be great. Have somebody else, maybe a Republican I can support. I don't know. I can dream, right? So, I don't know. Get a life, people. It just drives me nuts. All right, the last topic I want to talk about, and then we'll go to questions. So I want to talk about labor shortages, because it truly is interesting as an economic phenomena, interesting as a social political phenomena, and it's everywhere. So, in Puerto Rico the other day, I went to this, right next to where I live, there's a bagel store. And I don't eat bagels, but they have good juices. I go in there and we start chatting with the owner. And he says, I can't find workers. I just can't find workers. And he said that he thought the reason was that everybody was getting these benefits from the government. And as increased unemployment insurance, which the government approved, Trump approved, and then Biden extended these extra unemployment insurance benefits. And nobody wants to work because they're getting these benefits from the government, so why work? And he says, they're expiring in a week or two, so I hope at that point they start coming to work. And then he stopped and he said, and on the other hand, I can't, waiters and dishwashers, the whole spectrum, you know, I just don't, I'm just not getting them. I'm going to turn off my video here. How do I keep the super chat? Turn off my YouTube because it's... And then I was at my, my favorite Israeli restaurant. Some of you heard this yesterday. My favorite Israeli restaurant yesterday here in London, a Palomar, for those interested. Really, really good food. And I've been there enough so that I can chat with the chef, right? And saying how things going. You covering from COVID? And he said, "Oh no, the demand is through the roof. We're booked solid almost every day, but I can't find workers." And then I was talking to to somebody, again, one of the supporters for the show, who works for Amazon, like a project manager level at Amazon in the U.S. And he was saying, find workers. Are we streaming? Oh, there, I'm back. Okay. So it's strange because you don't really see that in a market, right? In a free market, you don't see it because prices adjust. People move to where the work is. And yeah, you might get short-term misallocations, but it corrects. Now, a big part of this is COVID. And it really hit home for me. You know, so I stay at the same hotel whenever I'm in London, pretty much. Once in a while, their rates are too high, and I shift to a different hotel. But mostly I stay at this one hotel. And I noticed this time that most of the staff are British. And that's never been the case. It's always been the case that they've been Europeans, that they've been from Spain or Portugal, and usually either seasonal, like students coming here for 6 months and doing some restaurant or hotel work or stuff like that. But a big chunk of the people working there right now are Brits. And that makes sense. If you're in Europe right now, partially because of Brexit, partially because of COVID, you can't come here. You can't enter the country. And then if you think about who works at restaurants in the United States, well, it's illegal immigrants. And there's just not that many coming across. Oh, the other place where there's massive shortage of labor in the United States is home building. Like they just calculated, I can't tell you the number, like the 8 million, there's a shortage in the United States of 8 million homes, some number like that, some ridiculous number like that, right? And the builders can't build them fast enough. They go like this. This is why prices are going up all over the United States. It's not because of inflation. It's because of shortages, actual, literal shortages of supply. Demand exists. Households are being formed, have been formed, but supply can't keep up. Again, who builds homes in the United States? Well, it's legal and illegal immigrants. The last 10 years, there haven't been many. I mean, most Americans don't know this, but basically from 2008 to 2018, net migration to the United States, illegal net migration to the United States was zero. Right? As many people came as left because there weren't that many jobs. And now there are jobs, and you know, they're not coming. They're not coming. They're not crossing. It's too dangerous. It's too risky. Or they're getting handouts. So they don't come and work. I don't know. But they're not. The workers are not there. There's a massive demand for workers. And then if you think about programmers, well, where does America get a big chunk of their programmers? From H-1B visas, from immigrants who come in, who work as programmers, whether it's Indians, Israelis, Europeans, all over the world they come. Silicon Valley is immigrants all over the place. 50% of all the startups have at least one immigrant founder in Silicon Valley. Right? But Trump basically stopped H-1Bs, capped them at a very low number. COVID is not allowing anybody to come in. So there's no legal immigration into the United States. There's very little illegal immigration coming to the United States. So if there is, I don't know, they're holding them in camps. You can see pictures of in different places, but they're not letting them into the economy. And there's a huge shortage of workers. And it all has to do with migrant flows. And the same with England, right? When you were part of Brexit, it was easy for Europe, no, when you were part of Europe, it was easy for Europeans just to cross the border and come and work in England. But now you need a visa, and it's difficult. And of course, again, with COVID, if you were still part of Europe, it would be easy. But you're not part of Europe, so nobody's issuing visas right now for workers to come across the channel with all the mask requirements and the test requirements and all that nonsense. So there's just no movement of people. There's still movement of capital. There's still, movement of goods to some extent. Even that, we'll get to in a second, is not really happening. But there certainly is no movement of people. And that is a massive detriment to the economy. And the economy is growing significantly slower coming out of COVID for a variety of reasons, partially because of central banks and government spending so much money and the debts and all of that, but to a large extent because of a lack of immigration, a lack of mobility, human mobility. And the whole world has become, in a sense, become, built walls. The walls are now bureaucracy around the COVID vaccines, but not only that, right? Brexit has hurt the movement of people in and out of the UK, whether you agree with Brexit or not. I mean, I was all for Brexit, and then, having basically opening the borders at least for most people, and having free trade. And you could just become a free trade island, just lower the tariffs to zero, and you don't need bilateral agreements. What do you need trade agreements for? Trade agreements are like full employment acts for lawyers and accountants and bureaucrats. I mean, trade is easy. Don't tax it. That's it. Now, the farmers won't like it. Okay. Time for them to get a new job. Right? It's just like the coal miners didn't like it when Margaret Thatcher did it to them. Right? They'd have to get a new job, but that's the reality. And think of how much Africa would benefit if you lower tariffs on food to zero. I mean, they would become the breadbasket of Europe. I mean, why farm in Europe? The cost of farming in Europe is through the roof. The cost of farming in Africa is really cheap. You'd get better food, and it's close, so it could be fresh, much cheaper. You'd lower the cost of living, which would increase the standard of living of poor people, primarily. And Africans would be better off, Brits would be better off. Win-win. Yeah, some farmers would not be better off. But they'd be better off too, because long-term, who the hell wants to farm in England? They should be computer programmers or something else, something that adds value. Or chefs, celebrity chefs. I like celebrity chefs. I want more British celebrity chefs. Trained in France, though. So I did eat today. I had lunch today at an African restaurant. It has 1 Michelin star. And the food is spectacular. It's really Iyoki, something like that. It's in St. James Square. Yeah. You been there? Yeah, she knows all my favorite restaurants. We have to compare notes. But yeah, definitely worth a trip. It's a prefix menu. The food is all a little strange. Flavors are a little different, but it's really good. I wonder if they have a labor shortage. Probably. So just the consequences of closing borders is ultimately lower economic growth and lower standard of living and lower quality of life for everybody, including the residents, including the people who raised the wall. They have a low quality of life because the wall is raised. This idea that immigrants take jobs, that immigrants lower wages, is just untrue. It's just bad economics. It's not how it works. And again, we're experiencing it right now. So you can go around London. I don't know what the situation is in mainland Europe. I'll find out next week, I guess, when I go there. Yeah, I'll ask all the restaurants I go to, do you have a labor shortage? They'll think I'm crazy. And I don't know what's happening in Asia. I mean, the Chinese economy is not doing well right now. That has to have a huge impact, particularly in China, but on the whole region, I think, ultimately. And it's not surprising Chinese economy is not doing well given the Chinese policies. So I think something to look to look for, to look at from an economic perspective, is what happens with migration movements. The recipe for economic growth, the recipe for prosperity, the recipe for innovation is openness. Openness of mind in terms of low regulation, so people can do stuff that nobody could imagine them doing. So openness to new ideas. It's openness of borders, to trade, and to migrants, and to capital. It's the ability to connect, it's a connection, the ability to connect both as trade, to connect both as sharing ideas, to connect both as learning from other people on a global scale, 7 billion people. Wow. I mean, we've never had that, where you can talk to 7 billion people, right? That is the recipe for economic growth. Allow that to happen. Allow people to share information, share knowledge, communicate with one another, and trade with one another. Remember, countries don't trade. Nations don't trade. Individuals do. Right? England doesn't buy mangoes from whoever produced it. Israel, I don't know where the mangoes come from. Spain or whatever. Right? You buy mangoes at a supermarket, from the supermarket. The supermarket bought it from some producer of mangoes in that other country. Now, what business does the state have to step in between you, all of you, and tax you all on that? And why do they tax them? They don't tax the, that will be an achievement. Growing mangoes in England, like almost like the British wine. It probably tastes the same. I had British wine the other night. British mangoes, can you imagine? That would be an achievement. So, well, they grow mangoes in the desert in Israel, so I don't know actually what mangoes require. I assume a lot of water, so I don't know why they grow in the desert. And heat, what? You get British pineapples. So, like, pineapples require a ton of water. You have water, but don't they need heat? So do they put them under, like, yeah. Yeah. The Victorians tried. That doesn't mean they succeeded. I've never eaten a British pineapple, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I live in Puerto Rico, and we don't even have pineapples in Puerto Rico. We should have, but the government has managed to destroy agriculture in Puerto Rico. And fishing. We import our fish. Like, we live in an island. And when you go to a restaurant, most of the fish are not local. It's like, what the? I get it that everybody likes salmon, and you have to bring salmon from where there's salmon, fine. But all the other fish should be local fish. Like, there's an ocean, the Atlantic, right here. Seems to be on now. Okay. All right. Mike got bored with me and turned off. All right. Somebody who live wanted to ask a question? Yes. I answered the question. Adam. Oh, where's the chat?
I can read it. That's all right. I think maybe I missed something. You said that immigrants do not lower wages, but that lack of immigrants has contributed to raised wages.
True. Yes, that's a contradiction. Good catch. It's the difference between the short term and the long term. So, over the long run, what would happen to the raised wages at Amazon, for example? Prices would have to go up. Some people will lose their jobs because demand will shrink. And while you might have select people with higher wages, you'll also have people who've lost their jobs. Now, if people lost their jobs, now there's more people competing for the jobs that are left. And if labor prices are allowed to be flexible, wages will come down. So in the long run, wages will come down. Even with the labor shortage, you'll just have fewer goods. There'll be less produced. and a lot of businesses will shut down. So some of Amazon's competitors will shut down, which will free up labor, which will then come to Amazon. Amazon will then have plenty of labor, they'll lower wages, but demand is not coming back. Right? So in the long run, wages don't go up because of labor shortages and don't go down because of labor surpluses. The other aspect of this, of course, is that the immigrants coming in basically become demand, right? They also start buying things. So they increase the number of jobs available in the economy. And they increase different types of jobs. So they might lower wages in a particular sector for a particular period of time, and maybe even for the long run. But they raise wages because of their increased demand. They can raise wages other places, and on average, wages stay the same. But good question. Good catch. It is symmetrical, and there's no question that in the short run, you could have a negative impact by bringing a mass of people in. There's a study about the effects of the, you remember there was this time when, like, Castro got really upset with his own people and with the U.S., and he basically opened up all the prisons, and he gave them boats or allowed them to just leave, and they all flooded Florida, right? And so there was this mass, in a sense, a very, very small period of time in which a lot of Cubans arrived. And they all stayed in one place, which is interesting, because usually migrants will go to where the jobs are, right? So they'll spread out. But here, because the Cubans all live in Miami, they all kind of stayed in Miami, and there's a study about the impact of wages in the short term and the long run in Miami, because you suddenly had the shock to the system. And yes, in the short run, you got wages go down. In the long run, they go up. And by the way, all migrations are like that, because migrants always go to where there are people like them, and then they start spreading out. Then they start migrating out. People never leave Miami, though, because it's, I guess, such a nice place. So the Cubans are still there. But if you look at when the Jews first came, they all huddled around the same cities in the United States. When the Italians came, they all huddled around the same neighborhoods. That is a typical migration pattern. But then, in the second, third generation, they start spreading out, and they're everywhere. And ultimately start following the jobs. So even the Mexicans who come to the United States, initially they would go to LA, and they would go to Texas, a few cities in Houston, in Texas. But now you'll find them everywhere in the United States, including in places where they weren't traditionally, whether it's the Carolinas or whether it's Arkansas, or places like that, because that's where the jobs are. And ultimately they'll gravitate towards the jobs. And that's more so, sadly, than Americans do. I mean, I've always argued that Americans, because of their own incentives that have to do with what people tell them, wait, steel jobs are coming back. But also because of the way the welfare state is structured. Once you get welfare in Ohio, it's very difficult then to apply for welfare in Kentucky or in Arkansas or whatever. So, and housing is very difficult. It's, the whole process of moving has become super difficult because of statism, because of the state, because of the welfare state. Each state has different regulations. Or Medicaid. Let's say you get Medicaid. Medicaid is socialized health care for poor people, right? In America, we have socialized health care for two groups. 100% socialized health care for two groups. Poor people and old people. Everybody else, it's kind of private. But for those two groups, it's socialized. And of course, there's so many old people that, over 50% of the healthcare system is basically socialized. All right. What were we talking about? Wages. Okay, we solved that. All right, Bree asks, all the bad political systems depend on politicians blaming the other for the people's trouble. The other. Yes, absolutely. I think you should confront them about this during these talks. Bezos didn't ruin your life. You did. Basically what I told them, I mean, they haven't ruined their lives. They're still young kids with a future. I didn't want to tell them they ruined their life. And I didn't want to tell them their parents ruined their lives. That's not my job. But I certainly told them that Bezos helped their lives and is going to help their lives and makes their lives better, not worse. But you're absolutely right. again, I didn't even cover this yesterday, but one of the things I despise most about Trump is his mastery of this idea of blaming the other. Right? And I think he lost in last election because he didn't play that card strongly enough. Maybe because he couldn't, because he'd been president for 4 years, right? But in 2016, the reason he won is he accepted that something was very wrong in the country. And he blew it out of proportion, right? Carnage in the streets of America. Not the America I live in. And I live in a pretty high crime zone in Puerto Rico, and yet no carnage in the streets of Puerto Rico, never mind in California. But he convinced Americans that things were worse than they thought they were. And then he said, it's not your fault. It's the others. The immigrants, the Chinese, and the elites. It's their fault, right? And what's the solution? Me. And that's how you won. And I think he didn't play that card enough in 2020 to win. And again, partially it's because, well, if it's so bad, where have you been for the last 4 years, right? It's harder to play it once you're an incumbent. But it's that other perspective which is so dangerous. I mean, Europeans always did it with Jews, blaming the other for your problems. But that is a key formulation for authoritarianism. Things are horrible. You're not to blame. It's the other. I'm the solution. Without a plan, really. I'm the solution. Right? That's authoritarianism. When that becomes popular, and that's why, I also thought Trump was... And of course, all politicians do this, right? All politicians do this. Trump was a master at it. Trump was a master at it much better than anybody else, right? And really made it particularly scary. Yes, Biden does it as well, not as effectively, and not as powerfully, and not as explicitly. All right, Darrell asks, are we in a housing bubble in the U.S.? I've heard and read no, but VP friend at prominent banks says thousands of small banks, credit unions are lending without the regs that big banks have to follow. Maybe they're lending with all kinds of regs, but the regs are not very good. It's not like the regs are good, so you're lending without the regs is bad. I don't think we're in a housing bubble because of this mismatch of supply and demand. People are buying, I live in Puerto Rico, and I've said that a few times, I think, today. But at the high end of the market in Puerto Rico, prices are going through the roof. Through the roof. I mean, I probably made 25, 30%, maybe more on my condo in the last 6 months. Maybe more than that. Maybe up to, probably not up to 50%, but maybe up to 50%. Just in 6 months in Puerto Rico, right? Why? Because a lot of people are moving to Puerto Rico because they're afraid of Biden and his tax increases. And they have money, and the supply is limited. So they're bidding up the prices. When supply is limited and demand is high, what happens to prices? It goes up. And the same thing is happening in San Francisco. In spite of the stories of people leaving San Francisco, more people are going to San Francisco than are leaving. Most of the people leaving California are not leaving from San Francisco. And therefore, there's still more demand for housing in San Francisco than there is supply. And you can see that over and over and over again. So I don't ultimately think that there's a housing bubble. Mortgage regulations are ridiculous in the United States. It's very difficult to get a mortgage since the financial crisis, even in small banks. And I don't, with all due respect to your friend, I don't think that small banks are being significantly looser than the big banks with regard to these regulations. All right, let's see. Did I miss some questions here? Oh, okay. Let's take this $20 question from Duncan. Another American listening from Sunnyvale, Silicon Valley. Sunnyvale is the heart of Silicon Valley. Thanks, Yaron, for bringing Enlightenment values back to the UK. Germany lost the battle, but German philosophy is winning the war. Can't believe young Brits don't know their history. They know it. I mean, here's the scary part. Young Brits know their history better than young Americans. The British educational system is better than the American educational system, particularly when it comes to history, political science, and these things. So as bad as things are here in Britain, from a young people's perspective, it's worse in America. And in America, youth is more apathetic, cares less, because life is more comfortable. Right? Again, one of the things I like about this school is their life is not comfortable. They come from probably, working class where people are hustling to make a living, right? And they know that, they know something about life. A lot of times middle-class kids have been coddled, they've been spoiled, they have no clue about what life actually entails. And it's hard to tell them until they actually go out into the world and experience it. And a lot of them never experience it because their parents keep giving them money, and they keep supporting them, and they keep coddling them, and they never really experience what life requires. Don't do that to your kids. All right, let's see. Thomas asks, is the distinction between total and limited war valid? Or is it simply a matter of using whatever amount of war is needed to achieve the stated goals? As a legitimate strategy, I don't think it's valid. I think all war is total war in the sense that total war means whatever is necessary for victory. And that might be limited, but the standard is whatever it takes to win, and not just take to win, at the lowest cost to your own people as possible, both monetarily and in lives, right? So that's proper war. There's no limited war doesn't place victory as its primary. It's not an issue of how many people you kill or what you do. It's more an issue of what is the goal, what is the purpose. All right, I'm going to go through these quickly because I've only got 15 minutes before my car picks me up to take me to the TV station. I did the housing bubble already. Kathleen asks from the UK. Kathleen, there you are. People obsess about how much tax others pay, but rarely question how much tax they pay themselves in the UK. Why do you think this is? Is it a useful way to get people to rethink conventional ideas? In a sense that they don't think how much taxes they pay, that it's a lot?
Well, for example, we have a system called PAYE, pay as you earn. So from your salary, the tax is taken out
Yeah.
of your salary before you
Yeah.
And it's been normalised for quite a long time. But I saw something today, and people were saying about the cost of living when they pay the money that's left after tax, but not thinking about
How much tax is being taken? So that's a big difference between America and Europe. And Israel. Israel's the same as Europe. In Israel, we always talked about, when we talked about wages, we talk about net wages. Nobody talks about gross wages. Who cares about gross wages? The only thing that matters is net wages, after-tax wages.
Yeah, but we talk about gross wages, but then it's like what you put.
But do you, in Britain, you talk about gross wages?
Yeah, our jobs are advertised as gross and gross
Okay.
salary.
So I don't, at least in my time in Israel, I don't know what it's like today. We only talked about net wages. Gross was irrelevant. It's like after taxes, because the taxes go, right? They're gone immediately. So it's good to talk about gross wages, and then you look at your paycheck and say, this is gross. Because where did it all go? It's gone. And then you realize how much taxes you pay. Versus in Israel, at least when I was growing up, you were conditioned not to care about the taxes because you thought in net wages, in after-tax wages, and you were paid, in a sense, in after-tax wages. So the wages was just, the taxes was just something that happened. Somewhere along the line, it happened. It's the cost of doing business. And it was not the realization. This was taken from me. Is it a way to teach people? I don't think there is a way to teach people through these kind of examples. Because what's there to teach? I mean, they know this. They know they're paying a lot of taxes. They see it coming out of their paycheck, and they rationalize it away. Well, this helps poor people. Well, this helps the economy because they're told that government stimulus helps the economy, right? Well, this is for security and police and whatever. This is what we need. This is what the people vote. This is democracy. I don't know, whatever. But they rationalize it away. There's no grassroots movement saying that you pay too much taxes. Like, I don't pay too much taxes.
Paying enough. Do you see what I mean? It's the argument there.
Yeah, we always look at others and say they don't pay enough because they don't pay enough because they're rich. And what's wrong is the richness, right? So if they're rich, it's a sign something's wrong with the system. There shouldn't be rich people. My mom used to hold this view, right? If you're rich, you did something wrong. You cheated the system. You're a crook. I mean, she basically told us that when we were growing up, right? So if you're rich, we didn't tax you enough. So we're looking at your tax rates in the sense of we didn't tax you enough. In the problem in the U.S., see, people don't know this, but the U.S. has the most progressive tax system among, Western countries. Like, your taxes are relatively flat. The difference between what the rich and the poor pay is not that big. And indeed, in the UK and in Europe, most people pay taxes. In the US, something like 50% of people don't pay taxes because the way they said it. And the rich pay a disproportionate amount of taxes. But nobody acknowledges that. But the fact is that the United States has the most progressive, not regressive, progressive when it comes to income taxes of any country. Right? I mean, other taxes balance it all out because, but in terms of income taxes, there's no question. So I mean, it's always good to point out to people how much taxes they pay, but I don't think they really learn much from it, unfortunately. Arthur asks, it's about a dysfunctional family, except the idealistic daughter played by Potts. Oh, this is that movie. Didn't know what he was talking about. This is the effect of gamma rays on man in the moon marigolds. All right. It's about dysfunctional family, except for the idealistic daughter played by Potts. The title is her project for science class. The movie finishes with her saying, "No, Mom, I don't hate the world." Okay? Well, I mean, you've intrigued me enough because of the title, because of your description, to go watch the movie. So I've got it on my list now. All right. Happy Avocado. A Happy Avocado. That's his internet name. He's Israeli, for what it's worth, because he's paying with shekel. When is it my moral obligation to immigrate out of... Prime Minister Johnson was threatening just 2 days ago for another lockdown and more mask mandates. You're going to... Wait a minute, guys. Hello? 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 Yeah. Yeah. You would live a better life being somewhere else. That's when you should leave. So when on net, you're going to gain more values from being somewhere else, and you think that is sustainable. It's not like every year you're going to have to hop around the world. Then you should leave. And a mass mandate might be it, depending on what other values. I mean, are you leaving your love of your life because she's stuck in Israel or whatever, over a mask mandate? I hope not, right? So it's all an issue of your hierarchy of values and what values under threat by being in the particular country that you're in relative to the values that are not under threat and where you think you can put together the best life possible to you. And there's a huge amount of uncertainty about that because you don't know what life's going to be when you move, particularly if you haven't moved before. But it's worth risking. I mean, I'm sitting in front of an audience here in London of, 60, 75% immigrants. People who left other countries and came to London because London's a pretty good place to live and a fairly free place. Not as free as some places, but pretty free. They still pay much higher taxes than Puerto Rico. But, they've actually got paved streets. So that's a good... We have paved streets too in Puerto Rico, but ours are filled with potholes. So if you're willing to slalom through the potholes, it's a great place. the pavement collapses. Period. I was just driving in a street that used to be fine, and suddenly there are these round holes, just where everything just collapsed down, because the foundations of the streets are so bad that they're like these sinkholes, and they're deep and they're big, and if your car goes in them, it might not come out. So one of the challenges of being in Puerto Rico. Should a country ever accept limits on weapons, such as nuclear chemical weapons, or consider civilian casualties when making war? Should they ever accept limits? So no, in a sense of all's fair in war. But the limits are set by the context. There's no point in gratuitously killing people if it doesn't achieve anything. You should never do that. There's no point in wanton destruction for the sake of destruction. You should never do that. So you should be laser focused on doing what's necessary to win quickly with minimal casualties to your side. And cognizant of the fact that you don't want to kill innocents for no reason. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is necessary for victory. You don't want to destroy if there's no reason to destroy. Now, sometimes there's plenty of reason to destroy, more than appears to be necessary to win, but because you're thinking of victory, complete victory. But so that's what frames it. What weapons you use? No, I mean, again, I'd say the one exception to that is, look, it's one thing to say America should go to war and do X, Y, Z, when America has the mightiest military force in all of human history. But if you're a small country, and if you're going to fight a particular war in a particular way that'll piss off a big country, this has a far more powerful military than you do, then that is part of your considerations, right? So that is part of the context, which will determine how you go to war. So there's no question that, I don't know, a country like Israel is under more constraints than a country like America. A country like Ukraine is under more constraints than a country like America in terms of military action. So again, context, long-term thinking, focused on victory. What does it take? That's the challenge. All right, we are going to call it a night because I've got a car. They haven't texted me, so hopefully downstairs, waiting for me. And let's see. I don't know when the next show is going to be. Maybe Sunday, but if it is Sunday, it'll be early your morning in the United States. I have no idea what bandwidth is like in Athens. I'm a little suspicious, skeptical. I have no idea what the bandwidth will be in Vienna or in Lisbon, although I'm staying in nice hotels in those places, so hopefully they'll have decent bandwidth. And I'll be able to do shows from there, but otherwise it's going to be a while. If I don't get bandwidth, it'll be a while before I do another show. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for the super chatters today. I have no idea how much we raised, but a lot less than if Ali was here. She wasn't here to bug you guys. But I will talk to you hopefully sometime later in the week.